The white light beamed straight down onto the courtroom bench, bright enough to strip away every layer of pretense. Monica Brown, a 36-year-old African-American woman, sat silently in the still room, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. In front of her, Daniel Cooper, her husband, a handsome white businessman in a gray suit, was signing the divorce papers with his familiar Mont Blanc pen. But today, his hand did not tremble. Once he finished, Daniel smiled faintly and reached for the hand of the woman beside him, Amber, a blonde PR employee with red lips and an arrogant glint in her eyes, as if savoring her own victory. Finally, freedom, I can live the life I deserve. Amber spoke loud enough for Monica to hear, every word slicing through the air like a blade. Judge Harris, an African-American man in his 60s, sat quietly on the high bench. He had seen hundreds of divorces, yet few carried the stench of contempt quite like this one. What he did not know was that this seemingly ordinary morning would become one of the most unforgettable trials of his career, the day when justice would not only be served, but redefined. Monica took a deep breath and looked at Daniel. In her eyes, there were no more tears, only a strange calm, the kind found in those who have endured enough to understand one truth. When people think you are weak, that is when you can shock them the most. The spectators could feel the humiliation of a woman publicly betrayed and wondered, would this woman, dismissed and disrespected, bow her head and walk away, or would she rise and turn the whole game around? Before becoming the quiet woman in that courtroom, Monica Brown had once been an art teacher, someone who believed that beauty could heal anything, even a broken marriage. She met Daniel Cooper 15 years ago, back when he was just a young man with sawdust on his hands. Working in a small furniture workshop on the outskirts of Atlanta, they dreamed together of building a furniture brand that carried the spirit of American craftsmanship, a blend of elegance and strength. Monica was the one who laid the first bricks of that dream. She emptied her savings, gave up a chance to pursue a master's degree in New York, and stayed behind to support Daniel, managing every contract, every expense, every rent payment. But as the company began to grow, Daniel began to change. He changed the way he dressed, the way he spoke, the people he associated with, and eventually, the way he looked at the woman who had stood by him through it all. Amber appeared during a product launch event, a young PR professional with blonde hair and a voice that sounded sweet but cut like a knife. Within months, she became indispensable to every branding strategy. Monica saw what was happening, but Daniel brushed it off with his usual half-hearted smile. You're imagining things, Monica. Amber is just a colleague. But that colleague slowly crept into her home, into their parties, into the life that Monica once believed belonged to the two of them. Worse still, Amber could not hide her arrogance. At a company party, when someone complimented Monica's artistic taste, Amber smirked and said, "Monica has such strong features. I guess that's what makes her unique." The table fell into an awkward silence. Daniel said nothing, as if the insult meant nothing at all. Rumors spread faster than truth. Neighbors started whispering. Friends gradually kept their distance. Monica, the woman who once taught her students about color and confidence, now lived in a cold house where laughter existed only in memory. But what Daniel did not know was that Monica had not broken. She stayed silent, watched, and remembered every detail. Because deep down, she understood. If they thought she only knew how to endure, they were about to learn the real meaning of patience. Behind her gentle appearance, Monica possessed something Daniel had never noticed, the meticulous precision and sharp memory of a woman who had once managed school finances for years. Back when she taught art, she also handled the school's budget, tracking every cent spent on supplies and every line in the accounting books. She understood how money moved, how financial traces could tell a story. And now, those seemingly useless skills had become her weapon. When Daniel asked her to sign a temporary authorization form to help the company operate during their separation, Monica smiled and signed, then quietly made copies of every bank record, statement, invoice, and contract. No one knew that she was quietly building an entire archive of evidence, numbers that spoke louder than any words ever could. Then one night, while scrolling through social media, Monica stopped. Amber had just posted a photo, a sparkling diamond bracelet with the caption, "A gift from success." Monica froze. She recognized that piece of jewelry. It was listed on the company's expense sheet, paid for using the couple's joint account. That night, Monica did not cry. She simply gathered her documents and drove to the office of Camille Ortiz, a Latina attorney famous for her toughness and her ability to turn divorce cases into declarations of justice. Camille looked at her, folded her arms, and said, "Men like him always underestimate the quiet ones. Let's teach him what silence can do." From that day on, Monica began to play her role. In front of Daniel, she became the obedient wife again, agreeing to everything, acting as though she had given up. He believed she was defeated. But in the shadows, Monica quietly collected every piece of the puzzle: receipts, invoices, messages, photos. Every time Amber bragged, every word Daniel uttered, she recorded it all, carefully, methodically, with chilling precision. She did not know exactly when the moment would come, but she knew one thing for certain. When it did, every look of contempt would have to bow down. Daniel Cooper believed he was getting closer to victory. When the divorce papers were filed, he demanded the majority of the assets, leaving Monica with what he called a symbolic allowance, a polite phrase for humiliation. In front of the press, he smiled and spoke about an amicable separation. Meanwhile, at glittering PR parties filled with champagne and self-congratulation, Amber could not hide her pride. They're about to rebrand the company, she told her friends, a new beginning, whiter, sleeker, and more exclusive. Monica heard those words, but instead of anger, she simply pressed her lips together and nodded slightly, as if she had already seen it coming. Because in silence, attorney Camille Ortiz, sharp and relentless, was completing a file hundreds of pages thick. First piece of evidence: bank statements showing that Daniel had withdrawn $250,000 from their joint account to invest in an account under Amber's name. Second piece of evidence: an audio recording from a product launch party, where Daniel laughed off Amber's racially charged joke and replied, "Let her be, she's too sensitive." Third piece of evidence: a video Amber had posted with the hashtags #NewEra and #NoMoreDrama. Sitting next to Daniel in business class, a flight paid for with the company card. Monica had all of it, and Camille was ready to unveil it. On the day of the trial, the courtroom was as bright as before, but the air was completely different. Daniel and Amber walked in hand, confident, certain of the outcome. Monica rose slowly, her face calm, only her eyes, deep, still, and cold as steel, hinted at what was coming. When the hearing began, Judge Harris flipped through the documents. He frowned, then looked straight at Daniel. "Mr. Cooper, have you reviewed these details carefully? This agreement clearly states that you consent to transfer 75% of your assets to your wife, along with a $5,000 monthly allowance." The room fell silent. Daniel froze, his voice trembling. "That's impossible. That's not what I signed." Amber screamed, "Daniel, you said she was clueless. You said you handled it." Camille stood, her voice calm but sharp as glass. She laid each piece of evidence on the table: statements, photos, recordings, and finally, the video. "Your Honor," she said clearly, "this is proof that Mr. Cooper not only betrayed his wife, but also embezzled marital assets to fund his affair and attempted to defraud the court." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Cameras turned to Daniel's pale face, to Amber's trembling lips. Judge Harris remained silent for a long moment, then looked at Monica, his eyes filled with both respect and quiet sorrow. He had seen many trials, but rarely had he witnessed a woman rise from pain with the calm dignity of justice itself. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath for the final verdict. And when the gavel struck, the sound echoed like a bell announcing this truth. One chapter had ended, and a storm of justice had just begun. The gavel's echo filled the room like a verdict card for arrogance itself. Judge Harris fixed his gaze on Daniel, his voice steady and firm. You not only betrayed the woman who helped you build your career, but also committed marital fraud. The court orders all your accounts frozen, restitution of the embezzled funds, and a criminal investigation into your financial misconduct. Daniel stood in shock. Amber, once so proud of her freedom and sophistication, screamed in despair. Daniel, you said she was just a nobody. The courtroom went silent. Monica rose, turned toward them, her expression calm, not angry, just peacefully resolved after the storm. She said softly, almost to herself, "You're right, Amber. I was a nobody until you both taught me how power really works." Daniel lowered his head, his face crumbling. Amber turned away, her tears mixing with smeared lipstick. Judge Harris brought the gavel down one last time. This court is adjourned. But everyone in that room knew this was more than the end of a divorce. It was the revelation of a truth, that justice does not always shout. Sometimes, it arrives through the silence of the underestimated. Monica walked out of the courtroom. The afternoon sunlight fell across her face, glinting in her eyes, no longer dark, but radiant, as if she had stepped out of a painting she herself had created. She did not win because she sought revenge. She won because she preserved her dignity. No raised voice, no need to destroy anyone. With intelligence, patience, and self-respect, Monica had forced the world to rethink how it judged a black woman. 6 months after the trial, Monica Brown was no longer the silent woman sitting on the defendant's bench. She had become the founder of ArtRise Consulting, a company dedicated to creativity and workplace equality. From art, she had moved to creation, not of products, but of awareness. Her story appeared in magazines, at conferences celebrating women of color in business. She never spoke about revenge. She spoke about the power of rising through intellect. Daniel lost the company. His shares were seized, his assets audited and taxed. He now lived in a small rented apartment on the outskirts of the city. Avoiding the cameras, Amber disappeared from social media after being fired when the courtroom video went viral. Those who once mocked Monica now stayed silent, not just from shame, but from the realization that they had misjudged a woman because of her skin and her quiet strength. One autumn evening, at an art exhibition titled Healing Through Colors, Daniel appeared. He stood before a large abstract painting called Freedom in Silence, a swirl of brown, black, and gold blending together like a wordless declaration. Behind him, Monica approached, calm and poised. Daniel whispered, "Monica, I'm sorry." She smiled gently and replied, "Don't be. You helped me remember who I really am." Monica's story was never just about betrayal or justice. It was a reminder that, when you are underestimated, turn humiliation into power. When the world stays silent in the face of injustice, let your actions be your voice. And if this story makes you believe that intelligence and dignity can overcome prejudice, then subscribe and listen to more real journeys. The stories of those who dared to rise and redefine justice for their own lives.